So welcome everyone. Lovely to see you. One of my favourite parts of the world, so it's always been a great joy to sort of come here, with the spectacular scenery, all of nature. John and I worked out earlier this morning, known each other about 15 years, so he's partly responsible for me becoming a monk. I went to Bodhinyana Monastery in Western Australia, Ajahn Brahm's monastery in 2017, and I've been a monk now 5.5 years. I've learned a lot. I've had some tumbles, so I'm happy to answer any questions or give you as much help as I can while I'm here for sort of 4 days. And in my time as a monk, because you spend so much time with the mind, your views change. You kind of sort of refine certain things. So over the 2 sessions, or particularly on Sunday, I'll probably try and share that. So like we normally did, and I think I used to go to 3 sessions a week with John in Sydney. I was in the Monday morning crowd, I was in the Thursday morning crowd, I was in the Thursday afternoon. We'll start with 30 minutes meditation. Before you close your eyes though, something that seems to work well with people I've tried to support in Western Australia, I'm going to ask you to think of 2 things, and then the third one I'm going to provide. So if most people are troubled by their thoughts in meditation, or they want to have more stillness, I want you for 30 seconds to come up with an image, a wholesome image, something that was really beneficial for your life, and have that image as a focal point for you to go back to if you have any difficult thoughts in meditation. So just see if you can pull out that image, and it's got to be wholesome. It doesn't have a lot of desire in it, but it might be favorite teacher, beautiful experience you had, something of nature. Just see if you can find that image for a sec. We've all known, and every single person, monastic or lay person, the thoughts can trouble us a lot. So your mind can be a heaven or a hell. But what we're meant to learn from the Buddha is you can intervene. You can intervene, and an untrained, unruly mind, is a hell. So the way you intervene in your practice is to say, when the difficult thoughts come up, you say to it, this is none of my business. You're disconnecting from that thought. You're trying to stop the energy. And much like clouds would pass across the sky, you want the clouds just to drift over. If you go and latch onto one, then you've latched onto that cloud and you watch it for 10 minutes go across the sky. If the image doesn't work, then you go to none of my business. And just remind yourself, this is your meditation time. Yeah? It's your period of peace. So see if that works, yeah? And I'll take questions later if you want to say, oh, it didn't work for me, give me some more ideas. So now, if we can start being peaceful, I will ask you to close your eyes. Doesn't matter what position you're in. Ajahn Brahm would even encourage people to lie down if they wanted to, as long as it was in a position that they knew they wouldn't sort of fall asleep. So a big part of our tradition with Ajahn Brahm is to relax to the max, to take a few minutes to settle in. You may have come from a busy space. So just move to peace. Value silence more than thoughts. And you came into the room with two big shopping bags. One in your left hand, which is quite heavy, has got a sign on it called the past. So let's put the past down. You can actually go through the physical movement if you want. During this 30 minutes, I'm putting the past down. It's none of my business. I'm just going to give myself peace. Just let it go. And the other shopping bag spells future. So again, if it works for you, go through the physical mannerism of putting that shopping bag of future down. If you need to, you can always come back to that later today. But now you prefer silence and peace. Let the breath come to you naturally. Welcome it. Don't force anything. Just calm and calm. I'm going to recommend that we each do meditation to ourselves. In the present Western world, we don't give a lot of loving kindness to ourselves. We forget. We forget to do it. So that beautiful image, I want you to put it in the heart zone. And admire it and nourish it for a few minutes. Any thoughts come, you just say, none of my business. Move back to the image and make it strong and bright, right in the middle of your heart. Give yourself as much loving kindness to you alone in your heart space, and try to generate heat and a feeling of safety, and a feeling of joy. See if you can build that up, make it quite strong over the next 3 or 4 minutes. Yourself to have as much loving kindness as possible. Generate the feeling and the care to yourself. For the remainder of the meditation, that energy, perhaps that ball of light, send it to any part of your body that needs loving kindness and attention. Maybe a specific area where you've got a little bit of pain or tightness. See if you can zap that area with loving kindness. And if the metta, the loving kindness, goes down in the heart area, just come back to it. Build it up again. Remind yourself of the wholesome, beneficial image. And say to those thoughts, "They're none of my business." So enjoy giving yourself loving kindness for the next 15 minutes or so. if inwardly you can feel the feeling of metta as perhaps an antidote to any disturbance during the day. You find a quiet place and use metta to nurture yourself alone. Spend a few moments with the feeling, not with the thoughts. We come to the close of the meditation. Always spend a few minutes reflecting. How do you feel now? Or think, how do you feel now compared to when you started? You got a feeling or an insight you can use regularly in the future. You see how you can give yourself metta any moment of the day or night, just for you and only for you. Just do reflect for a minute or two before we close the meditation. close the meditation, I recommend that you center that feeling in your chest area, caress it internally, and try and carry it with you for a few days. When you're ready, take a deep breath. Open your eyes and come out of the meditation. Bunch of ideas in there that I'll try and describe after you've had a tea break. Please have a cup of tea for 5 minutes and we'll come back together.
Would you like to do incense? Maybe also to welcome the people on Zoom. Good to have some people at home connecting, sharing the occasion, especially if they're at a distance and not able to be here at Farrants Hill.
Explain a little bit about why I made those suggestions. So that comes from hundreds of conversations with lay supporters, doing my own experiments. The Buddha said that metta for yourself could get through many stages on the path. Some commentators have conflated that we should have loving kindness for everybody in the world. But the main intention of metta is for yourself as an antidote to what goes on in the world. So the Buddha's teachings are all about this fathom-long body that we sit in, and we tend to create the world from our own feelings and projections. So it's very hard for me as a father. I've got a son of 28, a daughter of 26, and now a granddaughter of 3, to explain how in my lifetime the world has speeded up, the amount of distractions that are there, the things that can take your attention away. And we project out into the world a lot and say, I hope that next experience makes me a lot happier. But the most happiness that you can influence is on the inside. So most of you would hear, one of the Buddha's favorite expressions, which is the mind is the forerunner of all things. And because there's so much sense delight in the world, we find it hard to understand what the mind is and how it could sort of damage us or lead us into unwholesome behaviors fairly quickly. So to progress into deeper states of meditation, you need to sort of try and start to let go of some of those outward senses sufficient for you to see what your mind is. So why does a monk give up everything? Well, in the first few years as a monk, you're asked to practice sense restraint and virtue. When I was a novice monk, I had to keep 10 vows, moment by moment. When I became a full monk 4 years ago now, I have to keep 227 vows on a moment by moment basis. And all of that is meant to do is to slow me down sufficient that I would examine what's the body, What's feelings? What's perceptions? What's the mind doing? What are the attachments that I still have in the world? Because when you slow down, my belief that what the Buddha was trying to do with meditation, and I checked on John's boards earlier today, is to see reality as it really is. And we confuse a lot of the sense desires with the creation of an I. So I create myself moment by moment, and we don't realize that the senses are pulling us out into the world constantly. We're almost like a sixth sense animal. And each of those senses has its own preferences. So if you humor me for a moment, the eye wants to see things of beauty. It latches on and says, my conception of that, it's a pineapple. I find it really, really beautiful. I want it, and I want it then to go to taste. So the senses can, grow one on top of the other. Other people might hate pineapples and go, ooh, I hated the taste of that when I was a 5-year-old. When mum made me eat it, it made our relationship worse and worse. But in a very short space of time, something which is an aspect of nature, we put lots and lots of perceptions on top. But my perceptions would be different to John's, to May's. We would all have different perceptions and attachments, yeah? So what I was trying to do in that metta meditation is allow you to be kind to yourself, not be out in the world, but to turn it back inwardly and say, how would I nurture myself? And, it's the first time we've done this. If you have that image and it's really beneficial, the one I picked today was my dad. Sadly, I lost him, 37 years ago. He was fairly young, but he was a very sort of nurturing, wholesome presence. So I can just have that image, and there's an energy there which is cool, got some humor in it, yeah? And it generates a feeling. It doesn't necessarily generate the thoughts, because again, in the present world, we're driven on by our thoughts. If I asked you again to stop for a minute and say, you left here and you had a choice of TV program to go and watch, I'll ask you to do it in a second, but what I want to see if you can spot is, you bring up the image, but can you see the energy or the pull that's associated with what you've chosen? So consciousness works so fast, you don't necessarily notice it, but the energy of the pull out into the world, when you get a number of enjoyable experiences around that, you make it into an attachment. And something I'm going to talk a lot more about on Sunday, Yonaso Manasikara, you need the attention of what the mind is doing, almost before it goes to attention, to actually see how it causes a lot of suffering for ourselves and other people. So the image works for some people, but then other people feel overwhelmed by the thoughts. So one of the tricks for meditation, as you progress, is to start to understand and look at, are those thoughts mine? Now, sometimes when I talk about that, people think I'm mad. Like, what do you mean these thoughts, aren't mine? What are you talking about? Most of the thoughts that we've picked up are related to those attachments. So I'll make some jokes again about myself. When I was in lay life, my favorite team was FC Barcelona, because I discovered this guy called Lionel Messi at 16, and they had a fabulous period of time. I was very attached to that energy of it because they were winning constantly, yeah? So FC Barcelona can still pop into my head as a monk. It's not as bad as it used to be, yeah? But the thoughts are often your attachments to what you've decided will make you feel good. Or if a relationship is broken up or you're having a hard time at work, the negative thoughts come up and you're trying to push them away, going, oh, my boss is really cruel, you know? He doesn't see the real person I am. You know, he didn't give me that pay rise in the annual appraisal. And most of those thoughts then have come from external events. And because we hear it in our inner consciousness and it has a feeling associated with it, you go, it's mine. I have to deal with it. And I have to deal with it now. Well, no, you don't. Because if you saw it as a cloud going across the sky, you go, I don't own that cloud. I can't even influence it. If it wants to rain, it's going to rain. If it wants to take on a bit more weight and go to another area and drop the rain there, that's its choice. So society has given us more to do. There's a fair amount of pressures, you know, in being in the world, and we've lost that sense of, can I go to a quiet space and give myself loving kindness and say, that's my antidote for the rest of the day. So the last time I was here, someone, you know, asked me a question and they said, I can't do that during the work. And I said, well, I used to tell people to go to the bathroom. I've got to go to the restroom. And they're gone for 10 minutes. So they just shut the closet door, sit there, regroup, bring them back self to peace and going, you know, that person was really rude to me or that customer was really difficult, but it's none of my business. I'm trying to help them, but if they can't help themselves, I don't have to be infected with their anger. So all I'm trying to encourage, you know, with this sort of teaching is you can develop your antidotes that you need. And the Buddha would rather that you lived at peace most of the day. If you have a difficult moment and metta works for you, remember that you can pull off the road, you can turn off a disturbing image on the TV. But of course, the longer that you develop a habit, it can be a bit longer to unwind. And the second part of the reflections is, I think it's worth considering every 6 months or a year, why do I meditate? Why have I decided to meditate? And I think there's a younger group of monks coming through that are going to say, we really need to give people proper and deep information fairly quickly as to what is supposed to happen and how can this develop. So why do people meditate? Well, most give the answer to deal with my suffering. It's okay, you meditate. You're doing that to deal with your suffering. Have you asked yourself, what's that suffering all about? Where's the suffering coming from? Has it got a feeling? Has it got a texture? So the Buddha said, you know, you only need to study 4 or 5 things. The teachings in some respects are quite easy, but in this lifetime, if you believe in the concept of rebirth, we've carried our habits from a previous life or even from younger times in this life and saying, I need that attachment. That is my antidote for pain. I will go to that sensual pleasure because I don't want to deal with the pain, whether it's existential, whether it's physical. So the simple routine here is once every 6 months, say to yourself, why am I suffering and where's the suffering coming from? If you can get into that quiet space, if you can go out into nature for an hour, the answers will probably come to you. The bulk of it might be, I'm making this up, the bulk of it could be about a relationship, somebody you broke up with and you wish you hadn't. I didn't get that job that I wanted. When you got a sense of what the suffering is, then you say, well, if I'm still suffering now, and this has been going on for 10, 20 years, what should I be doing counter to that to reduce the suffering? So the Buddhist teachings are about Dharma in the present time. The understanding of the nature of reality is meant to reduce your suffering in the here and now. But most of the suffering that we have is self-generated. It's self-generated because we don't understand the nature of reality and going out into the outside world for something and believing it will make us happy when it itself is impermanent or transient. Yeah? So let's take another example. I've got a banana here. In Buddhist terms, the banana would say that's a sense object. How do I know the banana's there? Well, I've got an eye that can see the banana, so it recognized it. It isn't actually a banana. A banana is a conventional label that we put on that fruit so we can describe it to other people, or get a banana in the supermarket. The eye recognizes it as a banana so quick as a flash. It knows it's banana, and you might notice that you're salivating as soon as you say banana. But the only reason that you can know it's a banana is the mind has engaged with the eye and determined it's a sense object. What we don't see is it's all starting in the mind. If you lost your sight, you wouldn't have the banana. If you lost your hearing, you wouldn't be able to hear anything. So the Buddha was pointing to the fact that the self is of our own creation. And if we add more and more attachments on top, we're more likely to suffer because we haven't understand that process of nature, reality. Yeah? Now, what John teaches, what some of the really good monastics teach is to say, how can you gradually let go of your dependence on the world? How can I sort of break down that process which I just described? So an interesting exercise that I've only seen some people do well in recent times is, could you write down on a piece of paper what a feeling is or what an intention is? If you understand feeling and intention, then you can decide whether it's a wholesome act to go out and get the banana, or actually, as a diabetic, I shouldn't touch it. Or I've had 6 bananas in the last hour and I didn't even notice that I was just cramming it away because I had a bad experience an hour ago. And that's my go-to method for bringing myself back to homeostasis. But of course, it doesn't bring you back to peace because you've flipped the lever to go and get a sense desire where really you don't notice that the energy starts in the mind. And the mind is pulling you out of the world and say, take this, take that, give this, don't like that person, they can go away. And you go round and round. So with the metta meditation that I was offering, saying, can you feel differently, not thoughts now, can you feel differently if you take a wholesome image into that meditation and say, if I can stay with the image, the thoughts start to drift down. They're not there. You may have noticed periods of silence and stillness. If the image is there and you pick the wrong image, then that can generate thoughts, and it kind of tells you it's not necessarily wholesome. It's not something that you can lock on and stay with for, about 20 minutes. So in those circumstances, you go, okay, I'll just go back to that. I'll give myself the image. But in the present day, and I'll be interested on John and your comments in a second, most people don't give much loving kindness to themselves because they're out in the world meeting somebody else's objectives. You're working for another boss and you're paying off their mortgage. You're asked to meet a sales target, which is inappropriate. A relative is rude to you. All of those events are out of your control. The only thing you can do in Buddhism is look after your karma, your state. So, surprise, surprise, monks can get into friction sometimes. They may be good people, but it's black, mate. No, it's white. No, it's black. I'm sure it's black. I've been doing this for 30 years. It's black. And as monks, we're asked to spend a lot of time away from company, away from sense desire, being virtuous, sufficient, that you can calm down sufficiently and see what the mind's up to. Yeah. So the reflection I would like to offer is, with such a good teacher like John, so that's why I'm prepared to come from Western Australia, whoop whoop. A good teacher, you can push fairly hard and say, why would that work? I don't want you to give me puffery. I want you to give me evidence and data. What would I have to try and how long would I have to try for? Sufficient that I can say, no matter what disturbance came along during the day, I can be peaceful. How many of you know the Buddha's sermon on abuse, which I got to use earlier today? So it's quite a famous one, and I've used it a couple of times. Even monks can get challenged by old relationships that now they know you're a monk, they kind of want to bring you down. And I got challenged in 2018, and I went to Ajahn Brahm and I said, I think I'm going to have to do something. I think I'm going to have to go to the police, because now they know I'm a monk. They're just going to send nasty messages through whatever channels, because for whatever reasons, they think I'm doing okay in the world, but they want to bring me down. And he said, look, it's okay, you're a monk now. If they bring up here and stuff, we'll just say you're in silence. We're not going to put the call through, we're just not going to do it. And I agonized about it. And then 2 days later in the library, I found the Buddha's sermon on abuse. And it goes like this. In the time of the Buddha, there was this guy who fancied himself as the best debater, the best arguer in India. And he heard about this upstart called the Buddha. So he says, I've got to go and have a verbal match with the Buddha, and then I'll be proclaimed as the best debater, arguer, philosopher in the Ganges Valley. So he walks hundreds of miles and eventually he finds the Buddha, and the Buddha is speaking to a group. And the guy's quite agitated, because it's taken a long time to find the Buddha, and he shouts over, oh, you, come over here. We need to have a chat. And the Buddha says, friend, I'm just with this group. They've been very attentive. I need to spend a bit longer with you. I'll come to you in a few minutes. Guy shouts back, no, you don't get it. I've walked hundreds of miles. Come and see me right now. We need to have a debate. And the Buddha says, friend, these people here, they've walked hundreds of miles. Let me finish with them and I'll come to you in a few minutes. No. You'll come over right now. So the Buddha turns to the crowd and he says, this will just take me a few minutes. Forgive me, I'll go over. So he goes over to friend. Friend, do you have a name? I can't remember the name, but the friend gives him the name. And he says, friend, do you ever get invited to other people's houses for a party or a celebration? Yeah, of course I do. What a stupid question. Why are you asking me that? So, well, when you go to that house, do you take a gift to give to the host to thank them for their hospitality? Well, of course I do. I'm not mean-spirited, I'd always take something with me. Friend, if the host doesn't accept the gift, who does the gift belong to? Well, me, you fool. I would go home with the gift. Correct, said the Buddha. I give you back your gift of anger. It's got nothing to do with me. I give you back your gift of anger because there's no point in having a conversation when you're in this state. If the conversation is based around virtuous behavior, good speech, kindness, coming to solutions, we can do it. If somebody in a bad mood throws soil on a good person, the wind will blow it back in their face. It will follow them back because they leave the moment and they're still in anger. They haven't dealt with their anger. If somebody gets angry, it's like picking up a hot coal. And when you've got the hot coal in your hand, you burn yourself first before you give it to the other person. Yeah? So if the Bible is one volume, the volumes of the suttas are like 22, 23. And each sutta is a teaching about conduct and sense restraint and saying, there's an antidote for this. So I rang the police and asked them to investigate this matter in America. And when I give you back your gift of anger, if you want to bring it forward, we'll go through a third party. But there isn't any substance to it. You're not being fair and honest. But if it had to be the case, Ajahn Brahm would find a benefactor and say, go and defend yourself. I think you've done the right thing. Yeah. So these antidotes are there, but we don't often sit down and talk about them. And I found I saw a book a couple of weeks ago, and it caught my eye. Some of you may know the name, but the couple are called the Gottmans, and they have this lab in Seattle called the Relationship Lab. And their latest book is called Fight Right. The people at the beginning of the relationships don't learn how to deal with conflict and confrontation. They're into the Disney, this will last forever. We'll never have a crossword, yeah? And there's lots of well-meaning intent in that, but they don't sit down and say, the first round we have, how are we going to understand which hot buttons are? What words shouldn't we use? Which subjects, should we bring up? And the thing that impressed me about the Gottmans is they've been doing this 50 years now, and the male reckons that within watching 5 minutes of videotape of a couple discussing a matter with each other, he can predict divorce rates 95% accurate. He calls it the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, if you understand them then, also have antidotes, just like the Buddha. I think I've got 3 of the 4 at the moment, but I put myself under the pressure. But contempt, sarcasm, stonewalling, yeah? And if you understand, like, the person's had a bad day, if I'm struggling with my own mind, they are too, and we kind of miss each other. We don't mean to have the row. We didn't come home and want to set fire to the kitchen or sort of kick the dog. But the beauty then of the teachings is they're applicable in the here and now. And the thing that we're asked to do then is to say, okay, if I'm meditating, am I starting to see the results? Am I less stressed? Can I deal with those anger moments? Can I go back to one of those points in history, like I shared one of mine in a well-meaning intention, but what would I do differently next time? Do I have to engage right then? I really like Thich Nhat Hanh as a monk. I really like Thich Nhat Hanh. He passed a couple of years ago, but if you Google him on YouTube, he's asked a question by someone in the general public, and he's stone silence for 40 seconds. He thinks, and he reflects, and he wonders if he's about to say the same thing. And sometimes you think he's not there, in the sense of he's not engaged on it. But when he speaks then, it's on the question, he's being very gentle, he's making sure he's picked up. He might ask the person to repeat the question because he's quite not sure, or he's buying time, like, I haven't heard that one before, or I don't think I can phrase that, in the right way. So if you get the opportunity, some faces I recognize from when I was here last May, but ask yourself, why am I meditating? Am I getting the results? If you're not getting the results, ask John, reach out to a monastic and say, it's this bit that's worrying me, yeah? I can't put down this attachment. I've still got anger issues. I don't know where the anger issues are coming from, but I need, some antidote, some help on that. And that's what we're here for, Our job is to be of service to you. We don't want much in the world. I can only give you what I've learned. I've had some great teachers. Ajahn Brahm will have been a monk 50 years, December the 3rd. So I take advantage of that religiously. So please, any questions if those reflections might help you?
Thank you very much. much for that. I have an issue with reactions, habitual reactions.
Yeah.
Like, just to give you a simple example, when I'm driving and it's 3 o'clock or 3:30, you know, and something takes over me, and I just go in front of this guy, and I don't want to leave this guy, but you know, all the stuff, and I gotta wait for a roundabout. They don't know how to use roundabout, all that stuff. Now I realize that all these habits are coming from, you know, taking the kids to school at that time, and or when I go to work in the morning, I usually also get into those reactions. So I've been trying different things, strategies, but they're still there. You know, they're so ingrained in there, you know, and I see them coming sometimes, but I just can't stop. And, you know, I laugh after it, you know, I think it's really funny how stupid I am and how absurd when I see other people doing the same things I'm doing, you know, but yeah. So one thing that I found out is just by talking about it, it really helps. And so, you know, I begin to notice more often other reactions associated, you know? But the thing is, the thing is that it's still there, yeah. And I've been, you know, practicing for a few years now, and I just want to bring that to you.
So thank you for your honesty, first of all. So one of the things that's helped me is I've realized that you have to be very transparent with yourself. So I would have covered over things by some of the attachments I had, whether it was FC Barcelona. I used to think America was a great country. I'm a bit worried now, but you know, I had those attachments and I couldn't get enough, yeah? But what I'm describing is a habit. So you learn a habit, which if it went too far would become dangerous. So hopefully you don't crash into someone. In America, they pull a gun on you, perhaps, you know, shoot through the, you know, those types of things. So the teaching or the reflection here is you could sit in your lounge room and go back over the last one and go far back as you can, like, where is this coming from? Because that is what karma is. Karma's got bad press in recent times. You know, like, that happened to me because of my bad karma. The Buddha said, if you want to understand the intricacies of karma, two things will happen. It'll either push you towards trying to find the real truth, or you'll go mad. But it's not worth studying too much because it's too complex. But karma, as far as we're concerned, is the action that you take in a situation. So you reminded me that George Bush was being interviewed. I think he was a famous Australian, Andrew Denton. So he's interviewing George W. Bush in the back of his long limo going through Texas. And Andrew Denton noticed, he said, "Oh, everybody's waving at you." And George Bush looked at him and said, "They didn't used to wave with 5 fingers." They didn't like him, so they were giving him the finger, right? But you have a moment, you can reflect on it. So what I offered there was, could you respond with humor quicker, given that you get there eventually, and say, instead of getting upset, I'll just wish him well. He may be, you know, his mother died yesterday, or he's in a rush, or he didn't get the job that he wanted. I'm of a certain age, but the way I dealt with it in Sydney, you could buy this little box that sat on your dashboard, and if somebody cut you up, you had a choice of 4 things you could use. You could fire a missile, you could send a grenade. It just made the noise, right? And so we're a composite of the habits that we've developed over the years. And then fortunately we go, that one's not working for me anymore. A police officer stopped me now. The guy's chased me home. He's written my license plate down, yeah? So again, thank you for the honesty. Bit like the Tick That Hand stories. Slow down a bit. Where's it coming? And does it benefit me? Does it make me feel angry for an hour? You know, a bit confused, not happy. It sets the next mood for the next hour. And the incident was over in what? 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds? Yeah? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Did the metta meditation work? I'm always kind of looking for people's sort of feedback. So I think it's important that it's turning it on yourself and making yourself well. It has impacts on your physical health, on your mental health. Some people will do it 3 or 4 times a day. You know, set an alarm and going, oh, it's 11 o'clock. It's been a bit of a hectic morning. I'm going to go to the park for 5 or 10 minutes. The boss isn't watching me, but I'm just going to reset. But I'm going to reset around goodness and compassion. And, you know, that thing on the plane, I've done a couple of plane rides to get here. You know, they say, put the mask on yourself first before you look after the other person. If you don't look after yourself first, like if you've got good metta, if you've got, you know, you giving off a vibe, you'll find that people will be attracted towards that because you're expressing that, you know, all through your waking hours. And people will gravitate towards you and go, I had a really difficult issue with Brendan. Can you come and help me out? But they got you, Mark, saying, I wish I could have some of that and sort of be peaceful. And perhaps we'll be able to have Brendan at the same time. I don't want to go and cause a fight, but I'm confused about how I should intervene now. I should get involved. So if you're interested, there's a beautiful book. It's called A Flower Called Metta. I'll send John the PDF again, but it's about 36 pages. It's just about metta. It's done by this marvelous Thai monk who must have been a monk now about 40 years. Those that couldn't work with breath meditation or found the thoughts were overwhelming, metta really worked for them, that they needed to be at peace with themselves first, that they had an antidote that could work at any time of the day, and that got them, you know, their meditations going deeper and deeper. Please.
Just to reflect on meditation, I remember when I first tried metta as quite a while ago now, I remember the effects being immediate and kind of going, this is what I needed. But over the years, I've tried different styles and struggled to make it work. But I wanted to say this your instructions were very helpful and very natural. And thank you.
Well, that's kind of you, but let's see if we can help. So,
Sure.
why do you think metta kind of fell away? Because there's a big share there that you could probably help other people in the room with.
For me, yeah, overwhelm. Getting lost in trying to be controlling with it, maybe.
So if you had a baby puppy, or you were trying to nurture something and you were controlling all the time, you would get a certain result, but the puppy wouldn't necessarily be happy. It's waiting for you to make the next control move. Something people don't get about Buddhism is, and it's a famous quote from Ajahn Chah, who John was a nurse for, what, 30 plus, 40 plus years ago, perhaps. Ajahn Chah, one of the most famous sort of masters. He said, if you let go a little, you'll get a little peace. If you let go a bit more, you'll get more peace. If you let go almost entirely, you get the utmost peace. So it's counter to the way that society said you should go. You've got to have a big house, the fastest car, 3 holidays a year, you know, whatever that is. So it kind of builds up stress and tension, but it doesn't necessarily nurture you. But society says, you get this, you've really made it, yeah? So the overwhelm can come from, I'm looking for a specific result. If I do enough of this, I'm going to be in a new, mystical, fabulous state. But if you were just wanting to give peace and nurture yourself, you're more likely to smooth down to peace, as opposed to it's going to be around the next corner, or if I meditate 12 hours a day, I'm going to get there. So again, what I was trying to get you to reflect on is, let the thoughts go, but just try and sit with the feeling and say, you can sit in the feeling space and say, I prefer silence over thought. I prefer loving kindness over anger. I prefer compassion over hatred, or something like that. And you trust in the process that because you're looking after yourself, then your physical manifestation, body and mind, start to go, kind of like this. This is a nice place to be, yeah? You've done that for yourself. And you've got very close then to the Buddha's teachings, which, you know, got a lot further to go, but you're more receptive and you can see the moments that your mind is overwhelmed and the moments in peace. And you're looking to find the switch that says, I give up that overwhelm for peace. And that can happen almost immediately. One last question. I don't want to make your reading go too long, but I'm happy to answer any private, personal questions afterwards if you need the time.
I guess on that same conversation, like I've not really done much metta meditation, and that experience for me was I found a wholesome image that sort of shifted a little bit, and turned to sort of, you know, loving kindness on myself. That image somewhat was a family image, and then it sort of centered down to that. Towards the end though, and it could have just partially been because, you know, it's been a long day and physically exhausted a bit, but I felt my mind drifting just into really kind of mundane thoughts, and just willing myself back to that image felt like it wasn't, like I was willing it too much, you know, like it wasn't a natural thing. I wasn't letting go, as you were sort of saying. It was, is there I don't know, a way that I guess you somewhat answered it just before, but that's just a sort of recount of how my thought process went, and it just felt to me that that willing process was not, didn't feel natural.
Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah.
So anybody had a similar experience? Put your hands up. Look around. So if the mind has been attached to negative thoughts or deeply sensual thoughts for all the time, you know, up until the present moment, the mind is going to test you and say, can I trick you to come back in? It's almost like this fight goes on until you decide that you prefer peace over stimulus. So you got to peace fairly quickly. You got some reference point after tonight, like it worked. But then you got to set the test. That's what the Buddha calls Mara. So Mara is always looking a way in to try and get you to go back to sense desire and be reborn again and again and again. So the counter is to say, I can look after myself and I can be at peace. And when those temptations come, whether it's a thought, sense pleasure, anger, or something from somebody else, what's known as the 5 hindrances, has the opportunity in the present moment not to go there. But you build up some resilience and strength. And what I've learned from the teaching and working with people is meta's a pretty strong antidote, because you're giving it to yourself. And if you can grow it in your chest or in parts of your body, it doesn't take the temptations as much. You build yourself 10 days peace, 21 days peace, right? Now, it's not going to work every time. We can all have a really bad day. A monk can abuse me and I go, okay, I've got to go back off to my cootie and I'll ask for a forgiveness ceremony later. I haven't done anything, but yeah, so it happens to everybody in all walks of life. But the incoming incident, like the road rage, if I might call it that, my friend, there's stuff that happens every day, right? And I can only control my own karma. If somebody wants to come and get me, they might get me, but I've done nothing, right? I have really bad energy around Donald Trump. I can't put it down because I lived in America, because I'm just hoping that he doesn't get back in. But I got no influence on that. I've got absolutely no influence. And he's driving me potty, the way he speaks to people, the number of people that would vote for him, you know. And apologies, you know, I'm not going political here, but it's just a reveal of, like, that goes back to my first hero was Martin Luther King, and, you know, I thought civil rights was great. Everybody should be like that. Didn't materialize, certainly didn't materialize in America, and now we're 62 years kind of further on. So the mind, in the sutras, it's referred to as the trap, the honey trap, that the bait's there, but you don't know it's poisonous. So some people, you know, the deers go around this sort of bait and they get a bit hungry, so they go and bite the bait. So they get killed. The trapper's got them, can carry them off, do whatever they want with them. The next set of deers come along and they go way away. They've seen the trap and that. They see what happened to Joey and Benny and all that type of stuff. They go to the top of the hill. They stay up there for 2 or 3 months. Then they get hungry. They come down and go, I can just get it out. I'm sure I can get it out. I'm really starving. Yeah. But the thing is, there's 3 or 4 stages to that sutra if you want to look it up. But the 4th set of deer come down. They know it's the bait. They know it's the trap. So they eat around it. You walk down the street, you fall through a manhole. You know, you come back the following week, you walk down the street, you fall down the manhole. The 3rd time, you walk down the street, you fall down the manhole. The 4th week, you decide you walk down another street, a parallel one. Yeah? So we have to, rightly or wrongly, look after our own minds. Buddha was probably the first and only great psychologist, you know, managed to understand what this life experience is. And there's an antidote if you've got the problem. If you don't understand it the first time, go and find somebody that would help. But what's happening for you is normal. And that's a good meditation, because you have the good moments, you have the challenges, you can recognize what the challenges are, therefore you can develop the antidote. That might be a good place to stop. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Venerable, for sharing your guidance this evening, and look forward to listening to some more teachings and guidance on Sunday for those that can make it. And thank you all for coming out this evening, and see you again soon.
Yeah, see you.
And thank you for the people on Zoom. Thanks for joining in.